It's another Mental Health Monday. Go ahead and tap in, click on this. I'm anticipating that after when folks are watching the replay, this isn't our usual date and time, but we be keeping things fluid around here. So, welcome in to everyone joining. Katrina will be joining me in a bit, and we're gonna get going on today's Mental Health Monday topic, which is so timely and feels too relatable. We're gonna be talking about perfectionism. I'll actually just let y'all know right now, and that is a topic that I'm excited about because I don't know about you. Personally, I relate in the pressure to be and act like and front like we perfect around here. So we're gonna really lean into that today once my girl Katrina hops on. Let's see if I can invite my good sis. All right. Hey. Ooh, let me turn you up. Hey, girl. It is good to see you.
I know, it feels like it's meant for effort.
Same. So how have you been feeling, managing for real lately?
Um, Today I actually feel good, but I
Yes.
can't say that it's been the case for the last month. Today is good though.
Today, here and now, baby. I feel that.
Yes,
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear
yes,
that.
that's you.
I mean, much relate. Much relate. There was a Scorpio full moon. If y'all don't know, I'm a Scorpio sun and I'm all about it. And when I tell you, since that night, like I've woke up and it was a completely different like reality that I was dealing with all of a sudden. So I feel you in terms of managing today in the here and now. I am doing good today. I'm excited to talk about this conversation because I don't feel like it was by accident that it
That
popped
I made
up.
it up.
Yes, I was letting folks know before you hopped on already. Like, we're going to be talking about perfectionism, and it is a little bit, close to the heart, close to the
It is
chest.
personal for sure.
Okay,
I,
good to
I
know.
just read it and I was like, wait, that's not at all what. No, I made that up. That is not what the
But
idea
when the
was.
spirit knows, right?
It was like, no, Katrina, but that's what you need to be talking about. Okay, I hear
Right.
you.
And same. Our ancestors must have had a little kiki because I was
Right.
like, this is wild because I'm definitely unpacking a lot of that myself. So, yes, perfectionism as a general concept.
Yeah.
I guess maybe we can start with even just sharing by your definition or understanding. What does perfectionism mean or look like to you?
Oh, um, perfectionism, I guess, to me is this constant, I don't even want to call it a struggle, but this constant like movement towards
Mm.
everything being just right.
Mm.
Right? It's constantly feeling and moving towards everything being just right. And that can be in ourselves, that can be in our environments, that can be in our communities, that can be trying to push people in that way, trying to push
Right.
other people in that way. Like it's very much just always trying to make things look just right.
Mm.
And as you asked that, I was like, why is that a challenging question for me to answer? And I think it's challenging for all the reasons that we will be talking about why it's not a
You
good
trying to
thing.
give the perfect answer right now?
You're like,
No.
Also, as you really sit and think about it, it makes no sense.
Right.
Because what is the perfect thing anyways? What is just right? And I'm
Right.
like, I don't have an answer for that. I am asking myself that, and I'm like, I don't have an answer for it because it doesn't make sense.
Listen, and I'm right there with you. I actually really love how you just described it straight up of moving towards things needing to be, did you say just right or a certain
Just
way?
right.
Just right. Because that actually made me really sit in all of the tendencies that I definitely am constantly trying to move towards just
Right.
right. So that really hit over here because with everything I'm doing, it's definitely that. And I think that that is a really compassionate way as well of like framing it. You know what I
Well,
mean?
good. I'm glad I got through that assignment.
Right? Give you your star, because that's what you have to do with a perfectionist. You have to give us our flowers. You have to let us know
Please
that it's what you
validate me.
wanted. And well, that's what I was going to ask. I think we've made it clear. Like I was going to ask, do you or have you ever identified as like a perfectionist or someone with perfection? I'm asking the Virgo.
Man, the double Virgo, triple Earth sign.
Ooh,
All I know is perfectionism.
y'all know.
Everything is just very like this is my little box, and how can we put it in the box?
Organize it perfectly, step by step. Give me the instructions so I can do it exactly how you ask. I think that's actually an interesting point though, in like part like nature nurture type thing. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I think I really came out the womb like I just really like to give my best to anything that has my name on it, right?
Right.
I think just naturally that's who I am. And when I also reflect on my life growing up, the things that I was taught of how to move and navigate through the world, just as a little snapshot, I grew up in a military household. Let me use that
Right.
as like my framework, right? And on top of just my parents also, I think just having that natural sort of give it your best, probably where I get it from, energy, right? And it was very much the you need to get it right, and you need to get it right the first time, and it needs to be great always type of energy, and nothing
Absolutely.
less than is tolerated. Um, and I think that's what has made me such an incredibly determined and perseverant person who is able to always produce really quality things.
Absolutely.
And it's also the level of self-criticism and doubt and fear and is also like connected to that same place. So that's
Absolutely.
mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All
Yeah.
of the things that you said, I have felt and experienced. I don't come from a military family, but I come from Black parents who grew up in America and had to show up in all the ways
Yeah.
beyond their capacity many of the times because they had to make sure that they were fitting into respectability politics because
Mm,
that's what we do, right?
mm.
And so they were showing up in ways that were not realistic.
Right.
And having to show up in those ways, you pass that down to your children. And a lot of it in my household was like, you got to do everything. You have to be able to move through everything. You have to be able to move through it with ease. Don't let them catch you slipping,
Right.
right? Like do the things. If you got to deal with it behind closed doors, deal with it behind closed doors, but don't ever let anybody else see it.
Right.
And so it was always this internal struggle. And I think especially with school, like school was such
Say
a hard
that.
driving thing in my household because it was like, well, you need to be educated because you're a Black woman. Like, handle your business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, And that is the source of why I am here today, owning a whole business, doing all the things that I'm doing, and managing life. And also the internal struggle and all my anxiety and all my stress and why I be tired. It's both of those.
Right. Yes. And so the cultural piece, the family piece, specifically our family's ideas of how we should show up, like that is so real. And I love that you named respectability politics. Y'all know me, I could go in on this all day long, but I definitely feel, and to expand on that, respectability politics is this unspoken and spoken sort of rule and understanding of how to show up in the world as a Black person so that you are worthy of respect and worthy of being treated as a human, which is rooted in belief that our Blackness and whatnot is unprofessional, or not worthy of respect. So you need to show up, perfect, prim and proper, very Eurocentric, if you're unfamiliar with that. Would you add anything to that before I...
No, I think that was perfect.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for us to recognize that it is seeped in so many of the things that we do, right? Because sometimes we identify it as just the way that we look. Like, there was that whole thing where, like, your grandparents creased their pants and that kind of stuff. Like, that is part of it, where they straighten their hair and that kind of deal. But it is rooted in the way that we code switch when we talk. It's rooted in the way that we dress. It's rooted in the way that we sometimes talk to each other, deal with each other, or the things that we say around certain folks. Because we're our folks, right? And so the way that we, even how we are in school, right? The way that we show up in the classroom and the things that we say and don't say and the things that we experience and the way that we move in certain spaces at work, right? Like, it's rooted in so many of the things that we do.
Yes. It's rooted in survival is what it is. Like, in all of these spaces and all of these negotiations that we're making with ourselves, I feel like essentially it's how do I move through this in the safest way possible.
Absolutely.
Right? So again, for ourselves, for folks watching, addressing yourself with compassion, that this is how our mamas, daddies, families, generations have tried to survive, right?
Absolutely.
And we sit with it now and recognize, right, on the one hand, yes, it creates a level of intention around the things that you are doing, which is important, right? And there's also learning the way to still be intentional without often the shame or the criticism or the rejection or the demonization of these times where we are not perfect, these times where we're humans. When you think of when, go ahead.
That's it. Like, the times when you are human. Because that's what it comes down to. It's like, not being perfect doesn't mean that you are being anything less than human. You are showing up as a human being, which is all that you really have, right? As I was listening to you describe that and say that, I was also thinking how it's so unrealistic that even just the respectability politics, we did that for survival and it helped to keep us safe in certain environments and in certain ways. And also, regardless of how creased your pants was and how straight your hair was, they don't care.
We still here, y'all.
Right? You still Black, and it's still going to treat you how they want to treat you. And so there's a lot of, I think, what I'm noticing also with myself and with clients is we get to this space where we realize, I'm doing all of these things and I'm striving for all of this, but also, it's not realistic and it doesn't make sense and it actually doesn't feel good. It's actually not benefiting me in any way. that is helpful or useful, it is creating more discord and disconnection in my body. And I don't feel good because of the shame, because of all the ways that I demonize myself for these things that are not realistic.
Right, right, at all. And it's celebrated too,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
Like there is idea anyway that like capitalism, productivity over your personhood, over being
absolutely.
an actual human being, right?
Absolutely.
And um I just lost my train of thought, but that's where that sense of needing to be perfect is like moving
Yeah.
from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Capitalism, racism, misogyny, like all the ways that we as people are oppressed,
Yeah.
demonized, talked down to, right? And so we have all of these things that are happening, all of these systems that tell us you're not good enough just by showing up as who you are.
Right.
And so we piece together these pieces of like, well, if I show up just right, if I get it
Right.
just right, then I'll be all right. They'll leave me
Right.
alone. They won't talk to me crazy. They won't kick me out. They won't try to, lynch me or whatever. Like all of these things that we had to move through. And at
Right.
the end of the day, yes, it was survival and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. We needed to do it. And also it creates just so much confusion because
Right.
you're striving for things that at the end of the day are not necessarily going to matter all the time,
Right.
if we're being completely honest. And then it creates this dynamic within ourselves. And I think for me, that's the most challenging piece. It's like, I'm not even doing this for white folks anymore. This is Katrina just beating Katrina up at this point. Like, we just want to get this right. For what?
Right.
Nobody's gonna know that this program that you just put out and this event that you just created is not just how you imagined it to be, because nobody else knows what that imagination of yours created.
Right. 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 And that's
So
what it,
show up.
and that makes me think of like the thing of perfectionism is protection as well,
Right.
right? And going back to that survival, like even in just like the protection around the vulnerability of being like your idea being out
Right.
there, you being out there, right? And if I'm going to be seen, then I need to control how people are going to see me.
Absolutely.
I need to um, have them, because we're worried about what are they going to think about me, right? If
Mm-hmm.
I show up, and if I show up and I have some imperfection, right?
Right.
The judgment that's attached to it, which really ultimately goes back to what we're already thinking and feeling
Right.
about
Or
ourselves.
right. Say that. Say that.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's what you were, I really feel like that's what you're saying though, and that like it becomes our own script at a certain point. Like we
Absolutely.
are doing the self-policing,
Absolutely.
making ourselves fall in line, right? It doesn't have to be your parents anymore. It doesn't have to be your school, your education anymore. It doesn't have to
Right.
be whoever is around you. We take that on, and that's what that perfectionist voice is, right? So
Yeah.
it's celebrated, it's helpful in ways that are celebrated in society, and it's also at the end of the day us denying that we are human beings,
Absolutely.
flawed, making mistakes, which is really
Right.
just living life,
Right.
right? Easier
Yeah.
said than embodied all the time.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. You hearing you say, what was the word that you use? It is celebrated,
Right.
right? I feel like as a Black woman, especially in academic spaces,
Mm.
it's just constantly instilled in me and constantly celebrated in me that every time I overworked myself to get it just right,
Right.
there go that A, right?
Right.
Like there go that like accolade, there go everybody like pointing you out. And so it was celebrated a lot of the time, and it was something that was honored. Like you gave 1,000% when you should have only maybe given 100, and so we're gonna celebrate that. And it just reinforces how we continue to give 1,000%, even though it's not realistic. And we don't even recognize that we are doing it. We think this is 100%. I tell clients that all the time. Like, maybe your 100% wasn't really 100. It was closer to like 2, 3, 4, 500. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
the adjustment when we realize what 100% really is, when you really look at it, what is really my full capacity?
Right.
Realistically,
Ooh. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
what I've been doing is not my full capacity. It's way over my capacity.
Right. Right. Um, and recognizing like what that motivation is, because
Right.
that's a huge step in
Yeah.
recognizing that even our idea of the bare minimum or what
Mhm.
showing up, what um, looks best or is best is from understanding of just over giving and
Right.
overdoing, right? If that's
Right.
all that you've been um, told is where you can move from, you
Right.
know? And I think that's a lot of the work that we get to do with our clients is like reminding,
Mhm.
especially with my Black femme clients, like reminding us that we are humans. I
Right.
know the rest of the world is not uh,
They don't see it. They don't
right,
see it.
but I'm going to remind you,
Right.
right? uh, that making mistakes is not only okay, it's important. It's
It's a part of
important.
the journey. Yes.
Right.
That's where we learn. That's where we grow. That's where we have experience. Because if you
Right.
get it right every time, life would not be very fun.
Yes. Yes.
It would just look a certain kind of way.
Fact. Ooh, I love this comment from BJ. Thank you, fam. Capacity versus sustainability
Yes.
in reframing our tendency towards getting it just right and perfectionism. Um, really moving our idea of what just right looks like, feels like,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
Uh,
To something that is more sustainable.
yes, to something that is more sustainable, something that doesn't leave you having to, at least for me, right? That doesn't leave me having to pick myself back up again and put myself back
Right.
together from tearing myself apart to give you this
Right.
amazing thing, right?
Right.
That's not sustainable.
Yes.
Um, right? I love that. Thank
Yes.
y'all so much for adding that.
Yeah. Yeah. That piece of like tearing myself apart to give you something that was so perfect, and that rebuilding stage, that's
Mm,
exhausting.
yeah.
And I think that's the part that gets us to the point where we're like, wait a minute, this ain't working. And I don't want to do this no more. Like, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I got the accolades after I gave you the perfect thing, but now I'm tired and I'm tapped out and I don't have the energy and I don't want to do anything else.
Right.
And sometimes for me, especially as a business owner, it's like I did all this stuff to like create it, and now I gotta go like actually run the event or like do the
Mm-hmm.
thing, and I'm like, I don't feel like it. I don't want to do this anymore. Like my passion for it, my joy
Right.
for it, my just motivation is now gone. Not because I don't want to do the thing, but because I'm so tired. Like
Right.
I've given so much of myself just to create the thing. I don't have the energy to actually do the thing and be present in it.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that's the part that's like, okay, this is like, I gave too much.
Right. Right. And at the end of the day, you're still not seen, right? You're
No,
not even
right,
seen for your fullness
right.
because there is such a focus on the perfect I don't want to
Absolutely.
call it a facade or anything like that, but You know, because on the other side of that, that the reason why moving away from that is hard is because then again, it's that exposure of being
Right.
seen then as your human self,
Mhm.
and having to adjust even the ways that you move about setting up an event for your business, right? And
Right.
it's really
Right.
reorienting so much of like our approach to ourselves and how we approach the things
Mhm.
that we're doing, and um, depending on like your individual journey, like there can be
Right.
so much to unpack within like our
Absolutely.
specific motivations and triggers and things like that, right? But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Mm.
I'm wondering, as a therapist, how how being a therapist impacted your perfectionism.
That's a
And I'm being
great.
very particular about asking that question in that way. Not how has perfectionism impacted being a therapist, but
Mm.
how has being a therapist impacted your perfectionism?
Ooh, you know what? I like that you ran that back because how has being a therapist impacted my perfectionism? Being a therapist, I think, has positively impacted my relationship to perfectionism because in wanting to hold space and be with my
Mm,
community, I am not judging or expecting
mhm,
this impossible version of themselves.
mm,
And for me to reflect that authentically, I've had to really unpack my own stuff and
absolutely.
learn to be more gentle with myself. Uh, it's been a really helpful mirror to see myself show up in
Absolutely.
clients and to hear the things that I'm saying with them, to practice saying that with myself as well. So
Absolutely.
I love that question. What about for you?
Yeah. I have had mixed experiences with it. So, in a lot of ways, I feel like being a therapist sometimes like pushes that perfectionism
That's
because
huge.
there's a lot of like expectation as a therapist that we show up all
Mm-hmm.
the time when everybody else is in a pandemic.
Right,
Therapists supposed to be out here fixing stuff, right? Like
right,
we're just in so many ways not allowed, not expected to be human.
right.
And so I had such an interesting experience. And that's why I asked it in that way, because as somebody who is always moving through perfectionism,
Mm-hmm.
as a therapist, and then as a woman, and then as a Black person, there's all of these things that are constantly like I'm running up against,
Yeah,
right? And I
yeah.
think as a therapist, that has come up a lot too, where I'm like, wait a minute, y'all expected me to do these things that are
Right,
not happening. And in a way that impacts it positively, because then I'm like, wait, this ain't realistic. I can't do this. Hold on. Like, when it's me saying it to myself, it's like, okay, me, I'm in a battle with myself, right? But
yeah.
when somebody else starts imparting that on me, I'm at a point now where I'm like, wait a
Mm-hmm.
minute, no, no, Katrina can't do that. That's not realistic. That's
Right,
perfectionism. I can't do that. And so
right.
it's actually been a really interesting journey for me as a therapist in particular, because there's a piece of me that wants to be like, yo, we're human too.
Right.
Like we can't always show up for everybody else and be perfect.
Yeah. No, I thank you for naming that because that is so true. I know I have felt it being a therapist tap into the pressure of like expected to know better,
Right.
to always do better. That's been in my personal and the professional realm of
Right.
people
To
expecting,
always
oh,
be the
because you're
nicer
there.
one.
Yes,
Yes.
you're supposed to always have the answers. You aren't ever
Yes.
allowed to trip or have feelings because you're supposed to have all the coping skills. Like you're supposed to be perfect all the time. Um, and just not allow that stripping of humanity that our field,
Oh my goodness.
mm, Again,
it's so real and it's so steep.
yeah,
It's so steep. And
yeah,
I found myself, especially in the midst of COVID, just really in these spaces of like, yo, like, no, this ain't it. We're
fact,
all human. Like we are in the middle of a pandemic. Black folks is dying out here. Like it is hard. And I'm having a hard time. And like, y'all just
right,
think that I'm not having a hard time because I'm the therapist? Like, what?
right,
No, like I didn't train for this. This is not real.
right,
Oh goodness. It is something that I think we need to do a better job of in the community, but that's a whole other topic.
right. Of like creating space for us to be human.
Yes.
I totally feel that. And that's part of why, even on like Instagram, social media, I have my boundaries. I'm also very transparent because
Right.
I
Same.
cannot. I know that I knew from grad school, like, I'm not going to survive in this field if I feel like I can't be a person.
Same.
And that includes the being an imperfect, just Kayla as a person with her own shit.
Yes.
And then also on the whole professionalism and respectability and all of these ways that
Yes.
perfect is framed around being a therapist. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and also within that is definitely like a dynamic that I don't think is ours, but like who the therapist role is in community and how they're
Right.
supposed to be exalted and all of these things. I be telling folks
Right.
all the time, I'm just like you with a little bit of extra training, maybe a little bit of natural extra empathy. Like,
Right.
and this
Listen,
is
these
my role.
ancestors just said, Katrina, people gonna talk to you and we're just gonna give you the tools to help them move through it.
Right.
That's what it is. I didn't get nothing
Right.
different than anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, perfect is impossible. Perfect is boring. Perfect is capitalist. Perfect is some white Eurocentric shit. Perfect
Nonsense.
is productivity. And perfect will kill you, like in the most
Absolutely.
soul, physical, mental, emotional way.
Absolutely.
Whatever your journey looks like, to start to at least become curious of where and why that comes up, where and
Mm-hmm.
why it started or where it's rooted from. Uh, Highly encouraged, because again, it's something celebrated when you move through the world and you're always perfectly coiffed and you're ready to shine and show up. But we
Right.
know, right, the trade off that happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And please know that at the end of the day, like there are people out here who will love you as your full self.
Yes.
That you can
That.
connect more deeply when you
Yes.
come without your edges laid and without your pants creased. And when you just show up as your full self. There's so much connection and so much depth and so much joy that happens there that we are not giving ourselves permission to access,
Right. Right.
but it's there and it's beautiful. Like there's something beautiful on the other end of this when you get there. Like just
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yes. The trade off is worth it. It's literally you. You are worth it. You are worth it.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. I
Absolutely.
love that. I recognize at the end of this that we didn't do introductions. So do you want to close with just naming who the hell we are after all of this?
Absolutely. Hey world, I'm Katrina Long, holistic healing arts therapist in Inglewood, California, and obviously a perfectionist.
Hey world, my name is Kayla Lacey, and I am a yoga psychotherapist, founder of The Well Healing, also a recovering perfectionist. I really loved getting to talk with you about this today. And thank you to everybody for tapping in, commenting, watching in the
Absolutely.
future. We will see you for Mental Health Monday next month.
All right, girl. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you. You too, boo.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.